Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaya Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirye Nashti Prayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naitya. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 8, attaining the supreme, text 8 onwards. So previous verse, Krishna said, therefore Arjun, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duties of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So it's, yes, easier said than done. It's not that easy. Carry out a prescribed duty of fighting, but think of me. It's difficult to even do our job and think of Krishna. But to speak of fighting and thinking of Krishna. And that's why Krishna says, text 8, Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa na anya gamina paramam purusham divyam yati parthanuchintayam. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Parth, is sure to reach me. So in this verse, Lord Krishna stresses the importance of remembering him. One's memory of Krishna is revived by chanting the Mahamantra Hare Krishna. By this practice of chanting and hearing the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord, one's ear, tongue, and mind are engaged. And actually, also one of the reasons we chant on the beads, then our fingers and touch sense is also engaged. This mystic meditation is very easy to practice, and it helps one attain the Supreme Lord. Purusham means enjoyer. Although living entities belong to the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, they are in material contamination. So although living entities belong to the marginal energy, means we are neither spiritual nor material, in between. Constitutional position is spiritual, but are come under marginal energy, tatastha shakti. But we are in material contamination. That is where the problem is. They think themselves enjoyers, but they are not the supreme enjoyer. So material energy is lower than marginal energy in status. But our desire to control and enjoy this Maya makes us come under the control of Maya. It is crazy, actually. So they think themselves enjoyers. And why do we think ourselves enjoyers? Because we are part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. So we also want to be the enjoyers. But we just have forgotten, or this is illusion, how we can be the enjoyers. We can be the enjoyers by serving Krishna. That's the only way to enjoy. Otherwise, there is no enjoyment. Here it is clearly stated that the supreme enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different manifestations and plenary expansions as Narayan, Vasudeva, etc. The devotee can constantly think of the object of worship, the Supreme Lord, in any of his features, Narayan, Krishna, Ram, etc., by chanting Hare Krishna. This practice will purify him, and at the end of his life, due to his constant chanting, he will be transferred to the kingdom of God. So purification. Purification is what? Contamination is we think we are the enjoyers. Purification is we understand we are the servants of Krishna. And the real enjoyment is there actually. Yoga practice is meditation on the supersoul within. Similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, one fixes his mind always on the Supreme Lord. The mind is fickle, and therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. Many times, people when they see us chanting with bead bag and hand in the bead bag or bead bag around our neck, and we are doing other activities, then say, what is the use of this kind of chanting? Your mind is not in control. Manka manka ferale, this and that. How else will the mind come in control? What is the process? I mean, it's not like one day we get up in the morning, okay, mind is completely under our control. No. This is the practice. And we keep on practicing. Whether our mind is in control or not, we keep on practicing. And slowly, it will come in control. Just like yogis. It's not like first day they start doing yoga and that's it. The mind is in control. No, no way. Mind itself is very stubborn, and here Prabhupada, the mind is fickle. It just jumps from here to there. And therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force, till we develop this love for Krishna that we want to chant, we want to serve, we want to think of Krishna. One example often given is that of the caterpillar that thinks of becoming a butterfly and so is transformed into a butterfly in the same life. Similarly, if we constantly think of Krishna, it is certain that at the end of our lives, we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna. So it is certain if we constantly think of Krishna. And this is what Krishna said earlier, yeah, whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, that form you will attain without fail. So, and whatever we are thinking at the time of death is whatever we have practiced throughout our lives. And this is Krishna's guarantee, then you'll come back to me. Text 9. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anor Aniya Smraedya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasah Parastahat. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as a one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is the smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is inconceivable, beyond all material conception, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental, beyond this material nature. So many ways we can meditate on the Lord, think of Krishna. The process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. In fact, this is what Krishna mentions in the 12th chapter. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. First of all, the Lord is Purusha, a person. We think of the person Ram and person Krishna. And whether one thinks of Ram or Krishna, what he is like is described in this verse of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is Kavi. Kavi means that is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. Kavi is not just a poet. Poet is one meaning of Kavi. Kavi means he knows past, present, and future, and knows everything. We don't even know. I mean, if we are sitting in the room, what is happening outside the door? We don't know. What's happening in another room? We don't know. Even within our body, so many things are going on. We don't know how all the organs are working. We think we know. We don't know anything actually. But Krishna is Kavi. He knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe. And he is a maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. So he's the oldest, everything comes from him, or he's origin of everything, and he's the smallest of everything. Smaller than the smallest. Because as Paramatma, he is in every atom of the universe. He's smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. But the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore, he is called smaller than the smallest. As a supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as a super soul. Although so small, he is still all pervading and is maintaining everything. That's another inconceivable potency. He's so small, but he's maintaining everything and is pervading everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained, in their position, and all the life on every planet is sustained because of Krishna. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. So what's the difficult part? He's floating all the big planets in the air. He's sustaining. One other faith, once I was just listening to a video, and they were saying, oh, God is holding planet Earth. Okay. So then their question was, if the science says planet Earth is revolving on its axis, this is wrong because God is holding it. So Earth has to be stationary. And also it's not moving around the sun. No, God is holding it, that's for sure. No doubt about it. But he's not holding like he's holding we are holding something in our hand. Everything is happening because of his energies. And even if we believe that he's holding the earth on his hand, but still the earth can still rotate around sun and revolve on its axis. What's the big deal? Why can't God let earth do that? It's just like when we used to play, when we were little, we used to play this lattu. And sometimes we will put it on our hand, lift it, and the lattu is still revolving, but we are holding it. So we have to understand actually what the scriptures say, not speculate about it. The holding in our hand means then it cannot rotate, it cannot revolve. Why not? The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and it is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world, and yet he is beyond it. That is true. We cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond it? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world. That which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch. That which is inconceivable. And also there's some place it is mentioned, until we understand God is inconceivable, we cannot conceive of his personality, his pastimes, his form. He's inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons, avoiding useless argument and speculation, should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understand. Otherwise, it's just impossible to understand. Speculation, useless argument, they cannot lead us anywhere. And not just the scriptures. That's why we approach sadhu and guru. Because they are the ones who can explain to us what the scriptures say. But again, it has to be bona fide sadhu and bona fide guru. Priyana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva prabhor madhe pranam aveshya samya vastam param purusham upayati divyam. One who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See? So easy, right? One who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the eyebrows by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion. So here it is said that bhaktya yukto, in full devotion. So in this verse, it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of God. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows to the Agya Chakra. The practice of Shat Chakra Yoga, involving meditation on the 6 chakras, is suggested here. A pure devotee does not practice such yoga, but because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his grace. This is explained in verse 14. So devotees, they rely only on the mercy of the Lord, on the Lord's grace. They keep on doing their services, but whether they're going to think of Krishna or not, they just rely on Krishna's grace. But for the yogis, you see, Krishna is always called Bhakta Vatsal. He loves us. He is not called Yogi Vatsal or Jnani or Karmi Vatsal. Yogis, they have to do their practice and rely on their strength to make further progress, but not for devotees. The particular use of the word yoga balen is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Shat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life. So this is the goal of yoga, to think of Krishna, especially at the time of death. So for that, one has to keep on practicing, keep on practicing. Yad aksharam ved vido vadanti, vishanti yad yatayo vitaragah, yad ichanto brahmacharyam charanti, tatte padam sangrahena pravakshe. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. Lord Shri Krishna has recommended to Arjuna the practice of Shat Chakra Yoga, in which one places the air of life between the eyebrows. Taking it for granted that Arjuna might not know how to practice Shat Chakra Yoga, the Lord explains the process in the following verses. The Lord says that Brahman, although one without a second, has various manifestations and features. Especially for the impersonalist, the Akshar or Omkar, the syllable Om, is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman, into which the renounced order of sages enter. In the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahm by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way, they realize these two features of Brahm features. This practice is very essential for advancement in spiritual life. But at the moment, such brahmachari, unmarried celibate life is not, but at the moment, brahmachari life is not at all possible. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. Throughout the world, there are many institutions for different departments of knowledge. But there is no recognized institution where students can be educated in the brahmachari principles. So unless one practices celibacy, advancement in spiritual life is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to the scriptural injunctions for this age of Kali, and that in this age no process of realizing the Supreme is possible, except the chanting of the holy names of Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. See, for yoga, this celibate life is essential, not just important, it's essential. Because otherwise the mind, this is job of mind to be fickle. It just goes from one place to another looking for some sense enjoyment. And yoga means to control the mind, complete control, fixing the mind in between the eyebrows, and or meditating on some object. Of course, real yoga is meditation on the Supreme. But all these yogis, impersonalists, they like to meditate on the light or nothing, or whatever. The point is, this celibate life, one has to practice. But as Prabhupada said, the social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. It is so almost impossible. You cannot do that. So yoga practice, the Shat Chakra yoga, is just impractical this day and age. So that is why Mahaprabhu himself has given this chanting of the holy names. This is the only process of this day and age. Further, Krishna says, Sarvadvarani samyamyam manohridi niruddhyacham murdhanyaya dhyayat mana pranam astito yoga dharana. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air. Fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head, one establishes himself in yoga. To practice yoga as suggested here, one first has to close the doors of all sense enjoyment. This practice is called a pratyahar, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. The sense organs for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, should be fully controlled and should not be allowed to engage in sense gratification. So this is how we make progress in yoga. But what do people do? The yoga, they think yoga means all these yoga asanas, Patanjali yoga asanas, but Ramdev Baba teaches, which is one part of yoga process. But their thinking is yoga asanas says that's it. But then what do they do by getting a healthy body? Yoga asanas means one becomes healthy, fit. But what do people do once they get a healthy body? To engage more in sense gratification. But this is not the purpose of yoga. So yoga means one first has to close the doors of all sense enjoyment. Then we are doing yoga. Otherwise, as Prabhupada said, these are just gymnastics. The sense organs for acquiring knowledge should be fully controlled and should not be allowed to engage in self-gratification. In this way, the mind focuses on the super soul in the heart, and the life force is raised to the top of the head. In the 6th chapter, this process is described in detail. But as mentioned before, this practice is not practical in this age. The best process is Krishna consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind on Krishna in devotional service, it is very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance or in samadhi. So anybody engaged in bhakti yoga, in the service of Krishna, and fully involved in that, whether and any part of bhakti yoga, whether chanting or maybe cooking or cleaning or decorating the deity or whatever he is doing, fully absorbed, that is actually samadhi. So if one is always able to fix his mind on Krishna in devotional service, so devotional service is any devotional service. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mama anusmaram yah prayati tyajan deham sa yati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. It is clearly stated here that Om, Brahm, and Lord Krishna are not different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om, but the sound Hare Krishna contains Om. Chanting of Hare Krishna mantra is clearly recommended for this stage. So if one quits his body at the end of his life, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, he certainly reaches one of the spiritual planets according to the mode of his practice. The devotees of Krishna enter the Krishna planet, Golok Vrindavan. For the personalists, there are also innumerable other planets known as Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, whereas the impersonalists remain in the Brahm Jyoti. So impersonalists, they cannot go beyond Brahm Jyoti because this is the only thing they're meditating on. So whatever we are thinking of, whatever we are concentrating on at the time of death, that's what we'll get. But then he talks about devotees. Ananya cheta satatam yo mam smarati nityasha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yogina. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I'm easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. See, for devotees, it's so easy. Sulabha. He says Sulabha. Very easy to achieve. This verse especially describes the final destination attained by the unalloyed devotees who serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhakti Yoga. Previous verses have mentioned 4 different kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation have also been described: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Hatha Yoga. The principles of these yoga systems have some bhakti added, but this verse particularly mentions pure Bhakti Yoga without any mixture of Jnana, Karma, or Hatha. As indicated by the word Ananya Cheta, in pure Bhakti Yoga, the devotee desires nothing but Krishna. A pure devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek oneness with the Brahm Jyoti, or salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkam, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. Whereas a Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Hatha Yogi has his own selfish interest. A perfect yogi has no desire other than to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So service means to please the master. A devotee is doing service to please Krishna. But Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Hatha Yogi, they're not doing service. They're only worried about their promotion. It's a huge difference. Therefore, the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. He becomes Sulabha. A pure devotee always engages in devotional service to Krishna in one of his various personal features. Krishna has various plenary expansions and incarnations such as Ram and Narsimha, and a devotee can choose to fix his mind in loving service to any of these transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord. So a devotee can fix his mind, he can choose who I want to serve. Such a devotee meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti Yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. The Lord is merciful to all, but as we have already explained, he is especially inclined towards those who always serve him without deviation. So serve him without deviation. Now, without going here and there, this demigod or this, nothing else. The Lord helps such devotees in various ways. As stated in Vedas, Yam evesha vrinute tena labhyas. One who is fully surrendered and engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as he is. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual kingdom. The special qualification of the pure devotee is that he's always thinking of Krishna without deviation and without considering the time or place. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in holy places like Vrindavan, some holy town, where the Lord lived. But a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Sri Advaita who told Chaitanya, wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavan. So Vrindavan, yes, it's a place, but it's also our state of mind. So Vrindavan means devotees are always serving Krishna, always be with Krishna and enjoy being with Krishna. So if our state of mind, we make it like that, like Vrindavan, then where is a question of any issues, any problems, any like people suffer from frustration, anxiety, or this or that, depression. Where is the question of it? See, depression happens when things don't go our way. We want something and something else happens, we get depressed. We want somebody's company, opposite sex, it doesn't happen, we get depressed. But we want all these things or company of opposite sex for our enjoyment, nothing else. Not for their service. But if we change our consciousness, change our mentality, and we just want to serve Krishna, where is the question of any depression? As indicated by the words Satatam and Nityasha, which means always, regularly, or every day, pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are qualifications of the pure devotee, for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is a system that the Gita recommends above all others. So, many Bhakti Yogis, generally the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotion, service and neutrality. Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotion, service as servant. Sakhya Bhakta, engaged as friend. Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as parent. And Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in a transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. He cannot forget the Supreme Lord, and so for him, the Lord is easily attained. The pure devotee is always constantly engaged in transcendental loving service. So means his consciousness is always in mode of serving Krishna. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotees, even for a moment. This is a great blessing of Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious process of chanting the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. So that way we can always think of Krishna, meditate on Krishna, and at the end of life, one goes back, come back to Godhead. So easy, blissful process. Mahaprabhu has given, and Prabhupada brought it out for all of us. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
No, Prabhu. Nice class, Prabhu.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you,
Prabhu,
Prabhuji.
the force force of Maya is very strong because it's natural. On the
Not
top of it,
really. Huh?
on the top of it, you have to bring consciousness. So how much force one has to pull out to put so that the Maya force become weaker and Krishna conscious force become higher. No?
Well, Krishna is more strong, more powerful than Maya.
Yeah, that is true.
So Krishna's name is same. And it's not natural. Natural is Krishna. For a soul to serve Krishna is natural.
Mm-hmm.
But we have accepted this unnatural thing as natural. That's a problem. See, soul is servant of Krishna. Jivira Swarupa Krishna Nityadas. So that is natural. But we have accepted the other way. That's where the problem. Yes, that is why we have to struggle.
Yes, Prabhu, basically it is the whole society and environment, the way it has built up. When a child is born, मेरा बेटा डॉक्टर बनेगा, मेरा डॉक्टर इंजीनियर बनेगा, वो सारा चैनल ही उधर सेट हो गया, फिर सारी
Yep. कोई नहीं
प्रभु जी
कहता
बर्थ से
मेरा
पहले
बेटा
डिसाइड हो जाता
मेरा
है।
बेटा
हाँ,
डिवोटी बनेगा।
डिवोटी
कोई नहीं कहता।
पेरेंट्स
कोई नहीं कहता मेरा
पेरेंट्स
बेटा
को ही
डिवोटी
नहीं
बनेगा। करेक्ट करेक्ट करेक्ट।
प्रभु जी पेरेंट्स को ही नहीं पता डिवोटी क्या है, तो
यस
बनेगा
यस
क्या?
यस, फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम वहां से आ रही है प्रॉब्ली। यस,
मुझे भी कहाँ पता था। अब देखा जाए तो मैं जब से शुरू हुआ है ये, उस समय तक तो मतलब ऐसा था। उससे पहले जो कॉन्सेप्ट था वो यही था कि नहीं भाई, जब भी है बनाना ही बनाना है, इनको तो पढ़ाना ही पढ़ाना है, कुछ भी जरा भी
एग्जैक्टली।
नहीं था ख्याल, जरा भी ख्याल नहीं था कि थोड़ा इधर भी थोड़ा ध्यान दे दें। मतलब
या ट्रू 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 ट्रू,
सवाल
दैट इज
सवाल ही
ट्रू।
नहीं
इधर भी
पैदा
कोई
होता।
लाइफ है, इधर बेटर लाइफ है
हाँ,
रादर।
बेटर
या
लाइफ पता ही नहीं था।
या
सवाल प्रॉब्लम तो ये ना कि अवेयरनेस ही नहीं है, मालूम ही नहीं।
या
और जब पता चला है तो अब तो कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता। अब ठीक
तब
है,
तक देर हो चुकी है।
बहुत देर हो चुकी
नहीं,
है।
ऐसा नहीं, कुछ हो नहीं सकता।
प्रभु जी अब बस मुश्किल होता है अब इस समय ना। तो मुझे तो लगा आप अपने आप ही ठोकरे खा खू के पहुंच जाए इधर, तो बात अलग है।
या
हमारे
नहीं,
कहने से
ऐसे
तो
ही
नहीं
सीखते
होने
हैं
वाला।
आप। बस प्रसाद खिलाते रहिए सबको। That's all.
हाँ,
और कुछ फोर्स नहीं करना है, बट फीड प्रसाद।
नहीं
अपने
फोर्स
आप
नहीं
सब
कर
हो
रहे,
जाएगा।
जनरल बात कर रहे हैं कि मतलब ये सब चीजें जब तक खुद को नहीं पता है, आप अपने बच्चों को क्या सिखाओगे?
या
हाँ हाँ, वो तो है ही।
वो तो है ही ना, बस वही चीज है। और एक चीज और बताना प्रभु जी, जब कोई बिल्कुल ही ऐसी लेमैन, मतलब जैसे मैं सपोज मुझे कुछ नहीं पता है आगे पीछे का, सो किसी को भी शुरुआत करानी है तो क्या चीज उसको बोला जाए? हाउ टू स्टार्ट विद इट, जो स्टार्ट सत्संग सुनना शुरू करें या चैंटिंग शुरू करें या स्क्रिप्चर्स पढ़ना शुरू करें?
नहीं,
क्या
पढ़ने
चीज
से
है
तो
जो
नहीं
सबसे
होगा,
पहले?
क्योंकि
नहीं होगा ना,
पढ़ने से नहीं होगा, क्यों अपने आप से तो
हम्म,
समझ में आने वाला नहीं।
आने वाला नहीं है, बोरिंग भी लगेगा
तो
उनको।
चैंटिंग चैंटिंग इसलिए, और ये भी नहीं उनको कहना किसी को कि तुम जो कर रहे हो छोड़ दो ना, कुछ
हम्म
नहीं
हम्म
छोड़ो। अगर
हम्म
दुर्गा पूजा कर रहे हैं, शिव जी कुछ भी
हम्म
करो, बस
हम्म
5 मिनट चैंटिंग और कर लो।
हम्म
या तो इससे ज्यादा हम क्या ही नहीं रहे, बस 5 मिनट एवरी डे, वो तो कुछ क्या ही नहीं रहे। ऐसे ही हल्के 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 शुरू होता है। तो 5 मिनट हो जाए तो कह दो अच्छा, अब एक माला की तो 8 मिनट लगेंगे। तो कहेगा चल ठीक है, एक माला में क्या नुकसान।
हाँ,
पर साथ साथ प्रसाद देते रहो, कभी भी मौका मिले प्रसाद खिलाओ। सो दैट्स हाउ इट वर्क्स।
इसमें भी ना दो दो तरह के लोग हैं। एक जो रियली दे आर लुकिंग फॉर समथिंग, कि उनको कुछ रास्ता मिल जाए। एंड सेकंड वो है कि जिनको बिल्कुल ही जैसे कहते हैं ना, गुम हो चुके हैं, उनको पता ही नहीं है कुछ भी, टोटल इग्नोरेंस में है। सो उन दोनों में भी लाइक उनको जिसको थोड़ा सा इंटरेस्ट है, वो जानना चाहता है ना, वो फटाफट से आपकी बात को सुन भी लेगा। जिसको कुछ नहीं लेना देना ना, उसके लिए तो इट्स लाइक नेक्स्ट पॉसिबल। उसको तो बस
See,
कहते हैं
यस ठीक है,
तो
हर एक का
हाँ
लेवल अलग अलग होता है,
हाँ
हर एक
हाँ
का ही अलग अलग है। तो जिसको इंटरेस्ट है उसको बुक भी दे सकते हो, पढ़ ले।
हम्म
जिसको नहीं तो फिर ये प्रसाद,
हम्म।
और
और
अगर
बुक कौन
थोड़ा
सी,
सा है तो चैंटिंग।
बुक कौन सी, गीता
नहीं, गीता थोड़ी मुश्किल है, छोटी बुक से
है ना?
शुरू करो।
हाँ हाँ ओके। तो व्हाट यू सजेस्ट, छोटी बुक लाइक
हाँ बहुत सारी है ना,
जस्ट टू
साइंस ऑफ सेल्फ
स्टार्ट विद?
रियलाइजेशन है, या इजी जर्नी टू अदर प्लैनेट, ये सब है।
ओके 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 ओके। अच्छा।
तो उससे हल्के 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 हल्के
हम्म हम्म हम्म
आने लगता है।
हम्म हम्म। ओके
ठीक है, चलो,
ठीक है।
you have a
Yes.
safe
ओके,
and wonderful day. Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Jai Shri
Prabhuji.
Ram.
हरे
Hare
कृष्णा।
Krishna.
थैंक यू प्रभु जी, हरे कृष्णा।